Hi, welcome to this segment of our That Makes Sense Marriage and Family Mentoring video series here. I want to talk to you now about a very foundational concept for what it's going to take for you to work on processing and developing and growing in your relationship with your spouse, with your children, and this could work in any other relationships you have to deal with. And that's the concept that I call principles and truth versus strategies. And I'll start this off by telling you kind of where I came to that conclusion. Over the years, my wife Penny has been very interested in learning how to be a great mom and developing parenting skills and going out and learning how children function and that sort of thing. She actually went to college and was working on getting her elementary education degree so she could have a teaching degree when she decided that wasn't the direction that she wanted to go. But she's always had a real deep interest in kids. We have 8 of them, so that should tell you how much of an interest she has. But that also brings out a great point. When you have a large family, you get exposed to all different kinds of dynamics that deal with working with different personality styles and different children and all the different things that go on in your life. So, as we launched into this building a family of ours, and she delved into reading books and pursuing courses and going to seminars and things like that on child raising, it was always interesting because she would come back with some great ideas. She'd read a book, and the book would have some really interesting concepts in it. And myself, I'm maybe a little more dense, if you want to call it that or whatever, but I would go with her once in a while, or I'd read a book that she suggested. I really like this book. I think you ought to read it. I think it'd be real helpful for us with our kids. And the one I remember most specifically was that she found something she really liked, and she and several of her friends had been learning about it and working on it, and there happened to be a seminar here locally where some people were teaching this concept. And we went to the seminar, and it seems like it took us 3 or 4 evenings maybe of our time to go and participate. And as I sat through that seminar, I thought, this sounds really good. I think that would be really effective in our family. And so once we got all said and done with it, and I would come home and encounter a situation where I needed to use this plan that they had. And I tend to have a rather hot temper at times like that when I'm working with a kid and the situation is not going right. And I've learned to control that and everything to where I hope I'm not a really bad dad. But I found that in the heat of the moment, when I really needed to pull out what they taught me to deal with this particular situation, I couldn't remember it. And that always puzzled me. I'm like, how come? I know these were good concepts, but how come I can't pull it together when I need it? And here's what I figured out after a long period of time. And that is that what they were teaching me was a strategy for dealing with that particular situation, not the underlying principle that was governing why the situation was developing in the first place. And as I've learned over time through my more recent studies and the things that I've learned, that when we understand the principles that underlie the relationship that's going on, it changes things dramatically in our ability to deal with that. Because just understanding a principle in and of itself gives us an awareness that then can lead us to being tolerant of another person's behavior, instead of when we have a misunderstanding of that behavior and it doesn't fit into our game plan and the way we think things ought to happen. There is no tolerance. For the most part, it takes an extreme amount of patience to have tolerance for another person's point of view and to understand what's going on in their head. So I really learned something here on this concept of a principle. And hopefully I can take enough time here to really explain this idea, because it's foundational to not just to this, it's foundational to everything you do in your life. And that's this. It's really funny because in the English language, we use, when we talk about a principle, we also use the word law. Like the principle of gravity is all, we call it the law of gravity all the time. Okay? The problem with that, and this is what happened to me. Now, look, I'm 51 years old as I make this CD, and it wasn't until about 4 years ago that I understood this concept. And when you hear it, you're probably going to think I'm an idiot, but it's okay, as long as you learn it. But that is this, that we use in the English language, we use the word law to describe several different things that are similar but not the same. I'll give you some examples here. I already talked about the law of gravity. We've all heard about the law of gravity, the laws of aerodynamics, and other laws of physics and things like that. Okay, that's one category. We know about traffic laws, about the laws of our government, about different things that fall in that kind of a category. We also use the term for things like Murphy's Law, which, whatever you want, however you want to classify that. But you start to see here that there's different sorts of things that we apply that term law to. And I believe that that's one of the things that causes confusion in our society. Because here's really the difference in those three things. Take a law of physics like the law of gravity, for instance. It's my favorite example to use. But the law of gravity is something that has always existed in this universe. It's not new. It's a law of nature. It always has been. It always will be. And it is today. And the law of gravity, we all know that if we stand on the roof of our house and jump off, we're going to fall down and get hurt. Or if we jump off of a 50-foot high cliff, we're going to fall down and go on the ground. It's going to happen that way every single time that we apply that law. And that's the true meaning of a law. That's what I call a principle. And from here on out, I'm going to refer to unchangeable laws that have been around from the history of the universe. Those are the things that we're going to refer to as principles. The second category, I'm going to use the traffic laws, for instance. How many of us have inadvertently traveled down the freeway at 85 miles an hour when the speed limit sign said 75? I think we're probably mostly guilty for that, or whatever our version of that might be. Here's the difference. How many times do you drive down do you exceed the speed limit or break some other traffic law where you receive an instant consequence to that law, like you did with the law of gravity? If I'm driving down the freeway at 85 miles an hour, do the wheels fall off my car and I get in an accident and kill myself? No, most of the time not. Once in a while, we'll end up doing that in the presence of a police officer, and then he's going to apply the law to us, right? Okay, there's a difference. In the principle category, there's always a consequence that comes from an action. In the man-made law category, which is what traffic laws are, they're simply rules that we as human beings have laid out to govern the way that we interact with each other. They're for our safety, they're for just getting along with each other, for many different things like that. But they're a set of agreements that we've made. They're not a concrete cause and effect type of thing like a natural principle, natural law of the universe is. And then you jump over into the category of Murphy's Law, and those are theories or whatever we want to call them, but obviously they don't have the same meaning even remotely as a law of nature does. And so that's what I want to talk about here. It's vastly important that in our dealings with other people, in the relationships we have, that we start to seek out and understand what those natural laws, those natural eternal principles are that govern the interactions between human beings and how they work. Because when we start to understand that, and there are several of them, all of a sudden we look at our spouse and go, now I understand why they acted that way. I'll follow up on this one later. Right now we'll sign off. See you later. Bye.